go. Hello, this is Rudy Giuliani with America's Mayor Live on Veterans Day 2024. And we begin, of course, by offering a prayer for and a prayer of thanksgiving for the veterans who served us, those who lost their lives, those who lived, those who served us in every different capacity, because it was all necessary for us to preserve the peace and the freedom and the great blessings that God has given us here in America. We're at a point at which the military morale is the lowest a lot of people think ever. The enlistments in our military are dangerously low. And the view that the young people that would ordinarily serve of our military is unfortunately infected by an illness called wokeness, which makes it sound somewhat benign, but it isn't. It's really the product of years and years of communist infiltration into our government, both within parts of the Democrat Party and within our permanent government. And they've accomplished what they've always wanted to accomplish, which is to take apart a lot of the morale of our military. Of the many things that President Trump was elected to do, I'm not going to say this could be the easiest, but with the right signals, this could be done the fastest. I found changing the morale of the police department when I became mayor was a key priority, and it probably was the fastest and easiest thing I did. Leadership is of enormous value in military services, and of course, police departments are paramilitary services. Many of them are members of the military. So leadership can have an impact either way. The lack thereof can destroy the morale. The presence of it can take it through the roof. That's why we have great generals and terrible generals, and they have an impact. We now have a president that probably will be one of the best and one of the strongest for our military, as he was in his first 4 years. A lot of the ridiculous programs that were put into the military will be gone. We'll be training our soldiers to kill our enemies rather than to become drag queens, and we will be emphasizing honor and respect and duty. Some of the slogans that have been taken down. This isn't a place to demonstrate social experiments. There's a place to train very, very dedicated, strong, tough warriors who understand that killing is necessary to preserve this country when it's necessary. But you've got to be ready to do it. Because if you're not, they'll no longer be in America. We're faced with a world with tremendous enemies, maybe some of the worst we've ever had. The prior administration, or the one that's still there, has made them stronger than ever. When President Trump left, he left the I don't know what to call them, the Biden regime with a country at peace, a world at peace, largely, and he's taking over a world at war in two critical places, both of which have much more dangerously than just war have led to axes, AXIS, axis, like in the Second World War, which means that countries behind the efforts of the proxies out front are lining up to support them against the United States. Oh, the way Germany did with Russia and with Italy and with Japan. Sound familiar? That all happened in the build-up to World War II. That's why it was a war not between Germany and France or Germany and England, but between Germany and the world, because it involved Italy. And it involved Soviet Russia on the German side. Stalin, the guy that the communist influence in the Roosevelt administration allowed President Roosevelt to give half of Europe to. It began as an ally of Adolf Hitler and then ended the war getting Poland from our demented, decrepit, communist influenced president, who Democrats try to insist was a great president. I don't know. When you deliver people to generations of servitude, when you could save them, sounds to me that that's a great president, like Ronald Reagan, like Abraham Lincoln, not like the person who delivered Eastern Europe to communism, because he was surrounded by communists, and like now, but on a different level, the prevailing media covered up for him, as well as historians. It'll come out. It's just too much a truth. I have to begin, before I do anything else, by expressing my incredibly strong opposition to any form of pardon for Hunter Biden. For some reason, Trey Gowdy, while I was watching television late at night, I think on Friday, appeared and said something I couldn't believe, and wondered if he was all possessed of his senses. He is a former prosecutor and claims to have won all his cases. I imagine that's correct. I listened to him on television. In any event, he argued that presidents should be merciful and pardon or commute Hunter Biden's sentence. What are you, out of your mind? You got to look at the Hunter Biden sentence as a complete fix. The Hunter Biden case is a complete fix. In fact, that was put together to avoid all of the income that went to Joe Biden. It was a limited amount of the income that he avoided taxes on. I agree with you. I was a hell of a lot more effective prosecutor than you were, and I prosecuted cases that people remember. Nobody remembers your cases, Trey. And I won all of mine too, except mine were a hell of a lot tougher than yours. So maybe you can pull that bullshit on somebody else, but you can't pull it on me. Hunter Biden getting a pot? And you were a prosecutor for the United States Department of Justice? And these people trashed the United States Department of Justice? They originally had a fix of his original case that had to be reversed by a brave judge? And that ridiculous thing that he was prosecuted for, I agree. It is ridiculous. It's ridiculous because it's corrupt. He shouldn't be prosecuted just for that. If that were the only thing we were talking about, he should be prosecuted probably for treason. I mean, he only took bare minimum 21.1 million from Red China. No question, he took it. Oh, you question whether he gave it to his father only because you don't have the discipline to look at the hard drive. But let's say he took 21 million from our biggest enemy, China, and we should pardon him? What the hell's wrong with you? And don't tell me he didn't give it to his father. Maybe you should go read the hard drive and see it in his own words. You know why I know he gave money to his father? Because he said that. That's called evidence. Hey, prosecutor, it's called an admission. Strongest piece of evidence that we have. Remember that? Remember the charges to juries? You won all your cases, Trey. Hunter Biden wrote, for 30 years, I've given half my income to my father. Oh, maybe he's not telling the truth. Maybe any witness is not telling the truth. You could throw out any admission on that basis, except judges tell people it's the strongest form of evidence. You remember from criminal law 101, don't you? That in many ways, an admission is more powerful than a confession. Now, why is that, winner of all your cases? Because a confession can be coerced. An admission is voluntary. That was a voluntary statement he made to his daughter. Tell me the motive for him lying. Well, then argue that to a jury. Oh, by the way, it's also backed up by receipt after receipt after receipt after receipt that you could stuff down somebody's throat of all the things he paid for his parents. How about paying for his half sister's education to relieve Joe of the burden? Ever hear of a bagman? Ever hear of laundering money? If you had the discipline to pay attention, you're one of those guys that ran out on Trump, you got yourself all after January 7, because you bought the exaggeration, as a lot of you people at Fox did. Scary, scary. Ooh, ooh. Now, they were all big supporters of Trump now, but I remember the day after the insurrection. Running for the hills, lying like hell. I never thought the election was really fixed. I never thought that. Chief, you told me that. I'm not talking about you now, Trey. I'm talking about some of your colleagues who now like to bask in the glory of Donald Trump. I have a longer memory than he does because they used to be my friends. They used to put me on, and then I was banned because I said the election was crooked. I was telling the truth. They were lying. I said that January 6th was exaggerated, made hysterical, in large part influenced by Antifa. I just have a tape to support that they never play. I was telling the truth. They were lying. I think the American people know that now. I think it's one of the things they reflected in this historic victory. But maybe Fox should apologize. But cut out the pardon shit, huh? It would be a travesty of justice of the worst kind if he was pardoned. And it would be just a great signal to the deep state. Let's do it to those suckers again. In fact, there should be a special prosecutor appointed. Not to indict all of them. I don't want to see little people hurt. That's all that's been done so far. I want to see the big ones go. I mean, we got a record, unassailable, provable by even guys who didn't win all their cases, that the Bidens took about 50 million. One of the people who has that proof, by the way, is Zelensky, who's covering it up. He also is covering up massive bribery on the part of his prior president and the people in his country. And how the hell can you trust any penny that you give him? Because he did nothing about what was considered forever and ever one of the most corrupt countries in the world, and is one of the most corrupt countries in the world. Tell me what he did to change it. Nothing. He actually expanded it. He is the son of, in a political sense, one of the biggest crooks in Ukraine. So President Trump, be careful. Putin has his problems. He's an evil, vicious killer. Zelensky's got his problems. He's at minimum, a major accomplice in one of the biggest bribes in the history of the world. And might very well be a participant in it, since he got millions from the biggest money launderer in Ukraine. All of it provable by his own records, which he's concealing. He can also help you find the Biden offshore bank accounts so you can prosecute the Bidens for the rest of the tax evasion or anything else they're responsible for. And he's sitting on it, covering it up like crooks do. Well, the president has moved on already with some big appointments. One that I'm particularly enthusiastic about is my good friend Stephen Miller, who I think you might see on the screen now, who will be Trump's deputy chief of staff. So let's show some video of Stephen so you recognize him when we see him briefing us. You'll recognize him because Stephen is the architect, not by himself, but the main architect of the president's immigration policy, and probably among the most loyal to President Trump and one of the most effective, multifaceted. Stephen could have taken on many, many jobs. Also, I think probably one of his
about the deck.
That's a superior appointment. Elise Stefanik to the United Nations is another really superior appointment. She is was or is, but now an exceptional member of Congress, rose to the leadership in record time. She has the intelligence and the strategic ability to handle this very difficult assignment. It's sort of like being put in the den of our enemies. And she'll be a credit to the United States because she's exceptionally gifted speaker. And I think you'll recognize Elise.
God, America is for Americans and Americans only.
They're not hearing that. Don't worry. They didn't hear that.
So now the other who's on the short list for Treasury Secretary, and here I think there's a difficult choice for the president to make. It's going to be a question of well, I think we're seeing Elise Stefanik now.
I'm behind just a minute.
Yes.
I'm catching up. It's okay. They're not seeing that.
So Howard is in charge of the transition and has said that he's not able to join the administration. But that sometimes can yield to the demands of a president. Howard would, of course, make an excellent Secretary of the Treasury. I know Howard from the tragic day of September 11 when he lost half his firm and stayed by them to this day. That tells you what kind of man he is, but he's also a financial genius who understands our economy from the point of view of the practical, not just the academic, although he understands the academic as well. There are others that are excellent choices for Treasury. But Howard is right at the very, very top. So let's go to the choices for majority leader of the Senate, which is the critical position in the Senate. It's the one being held by Senator McConnell, son-in-law of one of the richest men in Red China. Did you know that? Or was that hidden from you? Was it hidden from you that one of the richest men in Red China, gave the senator a $5 million gift? Was it hidden from you that it's the next chapter in the book revealing the horrible crimes of the Biden crime family, where the questionable, massive payment to McConnell by the Red Chinese, and McConnell's change of position as a result thereof? Nor does it surprise you that nobody questions about it. It didn't surprise me that he turned on Trump when Trump turned on China. A lot of people did, including a lot of his fundraisers. Thank God he's back. So now that's exactly what disqualifies John Thune from being majority leader. His nose was so far up, what, it was pathetic. And the man has no ability to think for himself, couldn't separate himself from demented Senator McConnell, and was an enemy of Donald Trump. Pretty vicious in some of the comments that he made, which I will never forget. If they want a really harmonious relationship with the president, I do not suggest Thune. Cornyn would not be much better, but he'd be better. And the very, very best.
Do you want to hear any of these guys?
Yeah. Let's listen from a trader.
You support him?
Well, I'm hoping, Leanne, to have other options.
Donald Trump is the Republican nominee. Would you support him?
Well, I'm hoping, Leanne, to have other options.
Donald Trump is the Republican nominee, would you support him?
I'm hoping we have other options. And by the way, that's one of the nicest things he said about Trump. After January 6th, he was merciless, along with the guy who got $5 million from one of the favored businessmen in Red China, his boss, McConnell. He never bothered to question McConnell about that. That shows really strong loyalty to America, huh, John? Don't really give a shit if your boss got money from Red China. Yeah. The tall part is very deceiving. That's not a very big man. Cornyn, Rick Scott. I know he's the last choice. I know he's probably not going to get it. I'm for him. What a mistake. What a mistake to pick the other two. It's like deja vu all over again, according to the great American philosopher Yogi Berra. And very sad after all the happiness we just had. Let's put the deep state in charge of the Republican majority in the Senate. They didn't win it because of them. Are you crazy? You see McConnell out there campaigning? What did he go? Did he go campaign for them in the state in Pennsylvania? I didn't see him in Pennsylvania campaigning for McCormick. If he did, nobody understood him. I mean, the guy should be in a hospital. Get him the hell out, like the bum in the White House. Just because he's a Republican doesn't mean he isn't a bum. Anybody who abuses public office and spends time in public office when they can't talk should get the hell out. That guy's not functioning with the kind of brain that we're paying for. Then he's never functioned with the kind of character we're entitled to, or honor, or decency. Not if you take money from Red China. Sorry, that's like an end. The guy that should be the majority leader is a number one American. Great governor in a series of three, the middle of three great governors that my new state was blessed with. Jeb Bush, him, now DeSantis. And Rick Scott was as good a governor as they were. And it's hard to distinguish between the three of them. They all did great things, which just what a state wants. 3 in a row. Only one better than the other because they improved on each other. I'm not even sure that's true. I'm not sure that Bush isn't the best one because he had to make the changes. Or Scott because he had to continue them. Or DeSantis because he had to do even better. Great. So Rick Scott. And I think Rick would make the best because Rick is by far the one most on the Trump agenda, the 100% on the Trump agenda. We're gonna be successful if there's no distance between the president and the majority leader. Sure, it led to McConnell led to the Republican judges, but it led to the complete cover-up of Biden's criminality because the next chapter in the book was McConnell. It led to McConnell threatening Senator Johnson to not look into Biden. You know why? Because he looked into Biden. Next guy to look into is Mr. Red China. And when the president said some things that was sensitive about his cabinet member, who I don't think he realized, and they assign it to xenophobia. I assign it to the fact that Papa was a Taiwanese who became the richest man in Red China. Now, you got to be a dope nut to figure out how a Taiwanese becomes the richest man in China. I hope we put people in the State Department who are smart enough to understand that one. So, you know that a bunch of leftist women have said that, and they have actually cut their hair, and they're not going to have sex with their husbands. That's it. Now, another group of women, these are Republican women, who I I'm sorry, I always thought were more attractive to start with. They don't have that like bitter, angry look on their face, are going to have more sex with their husband to have children. They call it the Make America Gestate Again. Isn't that great?
Yeah.
Now look at the difference between the Democrat and the Republican woman here in the Post. The Republican woman has a big smile on her face, and the Democratic woman looks so sad, but she hasn't cut her hair yet. Wait till you see them with their haircut. See if I got a picture of one of them with the haircut. Oh yeah, look at this one. Imagine waking up in the morning. Not to be hard. I wouldn't consider this a punishment. I wouldn't. Now, I'm not allowed to say this because I'm a man, and therefore I don't know how to spell it, but it's called misogyny, of which President Trump has been accused of it 4,322 times. And I was accused of it when I was mayor, but it didn't do any good. I didn't know what it was. I don't know how to change it. But it has something to do with, you don't respect women. I mean, I was taught by my mother and father to have the greatest respect for women. I mean, hold doors. One of these jackasses once yelled at me for holding the door. I just said, I'm sorry. And then, when I saw the boxer hitting the Italian girl, I wanted to go beat up the boxer because my father said, if you see a man hitting a woman, you should beat the shit out of him. I'm sorry, my father was a boxer. He grew up in the streets. My father was right. My father used to say, a man who hits a woman is not a man. And he used to say, go up to him and say, how about you fight a man? You know what they do? They pee in their pants. That's what they do. And that's what we got going on the left. And that's what they're doing to masculinity. And here's the answer. You're not going to have sex? Who cares? Thank you. Huh. How about the ones that are going to leave? Cher's going to leave. And let me see, what other worn-out old hag is going to leave? They had them in the paper, and they had pictures of them when they were young, when people might have cared if they left. Right now, who gives a damn? I've forgotten who else. I don't want to name them without knowing. There are two other old hags. They want to leave. And I'm thinking, even though they got the money for the tickets, it might be worth a GoFundMe for them just to get them the hell out of here. None of these guys, Baldwin never left. Think about this. If Baldwin had left when Bush won, that wonderful young girl would be alive that died because the gun went off by itself. Well, I mean, that's the greatest example of gun control. Guns can go off by themselves. Democrats have been saying that for years. People don't kill, guns kill. And in the case of Baldwin, he actually offered that defense, and it was accepted because we don't live in a just country any longer with a real justice system. We live in a system in which Democrats can get away with anything and Republicans are prosecuted for nothing. Imagine. I didn't press the trigger. It just went off, and it killed her. And it's terrible what they're doing to me. Oh, man, we got to do something about that wind, huh? Maybe we should have a wind control program. Like, you know what it could have been? It could have been those windmills that they have out west. One of the windmills might have been very strong. It hit the trigger. Poor Alex just pointing it at her, just for the hell of it. I mean, it also, not only did the trigger have to go off, had to be pointed in the right direction to kill her. But nobody cares about the girl. I have a terrible thing to tell you. And I'm going to tell it to you real fast so I don't cry. But my very, very good friend, who has been my very good friend for many years, Michael Grimm, who does a wonderful job on Newsmax over the weekend regularly and then filling in all the time. who also is a hero United States Marine, a hero FBI agent, and a United States congressman. Unbeknownst to me, and I just read it today in the Post, was the victim of a terrible accident riding a horse. And he is, in fact, the last time I saw Michael, he was in horse apparel. I don't know the right name for it. But he fell off a horse, and it was a pole accident, and he is now paralyzed from the chest down. The accident was in September. He's at the Kessler Institute for Rehabilitation in New Jersey, which is the place that cared for Christopher Reeve. His good pal and my pal, Vincent Ignazio, who's the former Republican councilman and current executive director of the New York City Board of Education, made this public today or yesterday. He says, and I read Vinny, and I'll try to have him on tomorrow night, that Michael is currently immobilized and currently being treated to try to give him the function that he can obtain. A lot of prayers are needed. So there is a GoFundMe for Michael, who's going to need tremendous treatment. It was on September 22nd that this happened. And I would take the time to help Michael. Michael's not a rich man. He's done well, but he's not a rich man. He was also prosecuted while he was in Congress, a very questionable prosecution to open up a Republican seat the Democrat took. And then he came out and put his life back together again, and has been really remarkably good on Newsmax. I think you recognize him when you see that. Man's had a tough life, some tough breaks, and I'd say a prosecution that never should have happened in the age in which we do that now. God bless you, Michael. We're going to take a short break, and we'll be right back and give you time to go look for that GoFundMe. And we'll give you further on this, because this guy's going to make it. He's got a pair of you-know-what that are big as hell.
We're having the biggest sale ever on overstock clearance and brand new products. For example, save 60% on our Goose Down comforters, the best comforters ever. They go perfectly with our MyPillow bed sheets and duvet covers. Save 25% on our brand new kitchen towels. They're made with the same technology as our famous My Towels. Our initial quantities are extremely low, so get them now before they go. Our seasonal flannel sheets are finally in. You save up to 50%, and they sell out fast every year, so order now. They're truly the best flannel sheets you'll ever sleep on. Or save up to 80% on all our clearance items. And this is where it gets even better. For a limited time, your entire order ships absolutely free. So go to MyPillow.com or call the number on your screen. Use that promo code to get deep discounts on all MyPillow products. And for a limited time, your order ships absolutely free.
Wow. Here we are, pretty much at the beginning of the process here at this pristine, I call it a laboratory. It's not like a factory, it's like a hospital. This is the beginning of the process for roasting. Deep grain, very good quality. Most people don't use this quality. We deal with small farmers because they like to know who we're dealing with. They give us the highest quality, all organic, non-GMO. You should know all Arabica beans. No Robusto, all Arabica. They're going to go into the roaster, and it'll get roasted for about 20 minutes or so. Oh my goodness, look at these. My goodness. You're going to want to specially order these. This is what goes into Rudy's coffee.
This is Rudy Giuliani back with America's Mayor Live. And as I told you before, and you know, this is Veterans Day, which is a very, very special day. Maybe one of the most special because we deeply thank the people who from the beginning have made it possible for us to have the freedom and security that we have in the greatest nation on earth. That has taken human sacrifice, both in human lives and time taken out of careers and damage done physically. And of course, one of the organizations that does the most to help us repay that debt has been a constant sponsor and a good friend and an organization that I've had a lot to do with over the years, right from the beginning, and that's Tunnel to Towers. And U.S. Navy Lieutenant Bradley Allen Foster's story is one we can focus on as one of valor and selflessness. Bradley was born and raised in California. He was inspired by his father's service. Bradley felt a very, very deep calling to serve his country. And he became a pilot in the United States Navy. He underwent air and combat training. He was awarded the National Defense Service Medal. Bradley's goal was to be the best pilot and leader he could be, while also being the very best husband and father to his wife, Beth, and his then baby girl, Audrey. Tragically, Bradley's promising life was cut short by a helicopter crash off the coast of San Diego, California. Tunnel to Towers provided his family with a mortgage-free home in his honor. Bradley's death is a stark reminder that freedom is not free. It comes at a big price. Sometimes for Bradley and his family, the ultimate price for heroes who serve our country and our communities. Show your support for heroes like Bradley and their families. Donate $11 a month to Tunnel to Towers, T2T.org. That's T, the number 2T.org. I think it'd be appropriate now if we took a moment, put it aside, and looked at the wreath-laying ceremony. But we're going to do it with a president that supports the military, not a president that has gotten military recruitment down to one of the lowest levels ever. And he didn't destroy the morale of the American military. You can't do it. But he's done great damage to it. And he has shown ultimate disrespect by breaking the code of no American will be left behind, because this horrible human being did it over and over and over again. So we are going to elect to show the ceremony of 2018, where a president who respects and loves the military conducted the ceremony. Could we play that, Ted?
Play this is from President Trump in 2018. This is from 2018. President Trump laying a wreath at Arlington Cemetery. We're going to share this tab here. We'll be watching. There's no audio. Here.
See the president, and he will conduct a ceremony that conducted every year by our president. And it shows the ultimate respect and honor that we pay to our veterans, to those living and dead. Obviously, the ultimate price is death, but those who live injured or otherwise also pay a very, very heavy price. So shall we play it as well? We'll play the audio as well.
Order! Right shoulder. Oh! Present! Present! Oh! Order! Right shoulder. Oh!
Here we are, pretty much at the beginning of the process here at this pristine, I call it a laboratory. It's not like a factory, it's like a hospital. This is the beginning of the process for roasting. Deep grain, very good quality. Most people don't use this quality. We deal with small farmers because they like to know who we're dealing with. They give us the highest quality, all organic, non-GMO. You should know all Arabica beans, no Robusto, all Arabica. They're gonna go into the roaster and it'll get roasted for about 20 minutes or so. Oh my goodness, look at these. My goodness. You're going to want to specially order these. This is what goes into Rudy's coffee.
You can safely say hour and a half now, at least. The fastest hour and a half on the internet.
Well, the president had a conversation quite remarkably with the totally out to lunch governor of New York, Governor Hochul, who is everything wrong with American politics, including being intellectually inferior, somebody who appears to be in it only for the money. She and her husband are involved in a very, very shady relationship with the Buffalo football team's stadium, which she's been trying to finagle since she was a local official in Buffalo, even though her husband stands to gain millions and millions from it. And as governor, she put in extra funding for it. She took a contribution from a COVID manufacturer for COVID medications or tests way after COVID was over, while she still had the phony emergency power, and they generated. She paid a couple $100,000 extra for it than California did, and that came back to her as a campaign contribution. And although the Biden administration went after Adams because he criticized them for far less than that, they've completely ignored Hochul's skullduggery. The president had a conversation with her, and he promised, despite the fact that she and Letitia James, who has got to be the most unethical, most dishonest attorney general in America, could also be one of the dumbest attorney generals in America, held a press conference saying they were going after Trump. That's right after he was elected. The president called her, or she called him, or whatever, and he promised to help in every way that he can, New York. And of course, Adams also, he's said he's going to help. There's also suggestions he may pardon Adams. Well, let me give you a couple of comments on somebody who knows New York better than anyone. Number one, Hochul and Adams, with regard to immigration, they want just one thing. They want money. They want you, the American taxpayer, to pay for what they ask for. Now, it's a little different in other states. I was a New Yorker, and I still love New York. But the worst thing in the world is to give them money for illegal immigration. They were a sanctuary city, better and bigger than anyone else. Adams specifically advertised for them to come to New York. Yes, Biden let them in. And if you were Springfield, Ohio, you don't deserve what happened to you because you're not a sanctuary city. You didn't ask for all those Haitians who are driving cars who don't know how to drive and are killing you. You didn't ask for them. New York asked for them. New York asked for more. New York was just about advertising like you advertise a resort. And Adams said he would give you, and then he kept laying it on, a welfare, back COVID money, education, college education, promised jobs, never produced the jobs, but he promised, and then they didn't want them. When he put out his jobs program, 5% of the people, I mean, Adams lives in this world, which I don't know if he really lives in it, but Adams likes to think of these as the immigrants of the 1930s and 1940s who came here to work. He doesn't recognize the fact that this is anywhere from 12 to 20 million unvetted people with a disproportionate number of criminals. That's what happens when you completely open a border and you say, come in, and you don't check people. When they came in at Ellis Island, they were all vetted very carefully. They'd put in jail if there's any problem. They'd put in hospitals if there's any problem. Oh, by the way, Ellis Island over 70 years had 12,000 people. United States of America, over 3.5 years of the criminals Biden and Harris, had 15 to 20 million people unvetted, partially vetted, tiny 3 questions. or not at all. So when you tell me they're not a disproportionate number of criminals, you don't know what the hell you're talking about. Adams likes to say that 60% of the crime in Queens is committed by illegal aliens. And he wants Trump to give him money for it. Well, how about they do away with Sanctuary City, which happens to be illegal, by the way. It happens to be criminal. I would say that Sanctuary City is the same thing as harboring fugitives. These people are wanted by the federal government for committing a crime. You, as the mayor, Mayor Adams, you, as the governor, idiot Hochul, instruct the police to not report them under federal law, which supersedes state law. You're making your cops criminals, you jackass. And you want money? Okay. Let's have a little program for you getting the money. And if you don't want to do the program, let's start prosecuting you for harboring criminals. No joke here. They're killing New Yorkers. You're getting your people killed, and nobody gives a damn. 60% of the crime are committed by the people you invited here, Adams. I'm sorry you're under investigation. I really do feel you're being screwed by a completely corrupt administration because they screw me all the time, but nobody cares. And I think the president would make a very big mistake pardoning you because there are state investigations of you for far more serious things. What happens if he pardons you and you turn out to be guilty of one of those? Why the hell did you have all these emergency powers? Why didn't you have no bid contracts? Bullshit, you didn't have enough time for them. I did your job. I actually did your job better than you would even dream of doing it. I know why you extend the emergency. So you can have a no bid contract and you can have your crooked underlings give it out to your friends. And like Hochul produces your campaign contributions. I never did that. You know why? Because despite all the garbage, I'm honest, including despite the damn judge who's trying to take away all my property. I don't even have enough cash to write out a check right now because of those two women and the way in which their judgment is being enforced. And I'm giving none of the humane exemptions even that exist under New York law by a Democrat judge who acts very nice, but has me in a position where I got to pay to deliver property if I have the money to do it. And that's one of the reasons, a year ago, I left that Democratic dictatorship. Not that I don't love New York, but I mean, I guess there were people who loved Germany. And after a while, you don't stay there anymore. Hardening Adams? No doubt that it covered it up for him. But that's not a good reason to pardon kickbacks. I mean, you got to be a jackass not to figure out what he did. Let me explain something to you if you ever want to be a prosecutor. If you see a Democrat, and you see a Democrat quite fond of emergency declarations, and you see big contracts, you got a 9 out of 10 chance of making a case. Mm-hmm. Put those three things together now. Emergencies mean you don't have to have comparative bidding, which also have with them a tremendous amount of accounting and oversight, and also can be looked into by the relevant controller, either of the state or the city. Often a kind of an adversary, because he probably wants your job. So he's going to look at them very carefully. And if there's something wrong, he's going to point it out, like you're paying too much. All of the homeless contracts. So here's the picture we have with Adams, who's looking for a pardon. Immediately, he went to emergency when the illegal aliens who he invited in came. So what the hell is he inviting so many in for? He just likes them? Or did he want to get himself in a situation like they had during the pandemic with emergency powers? I mean, someday somebody should go back and look at the governors around the country who whacked up millions over PPP. And that's why they extended the emergency powers. You think it was just a teachers union? Like hell. They don't do things just for the teachers union. A lot of these guys do things for money. So the emergency declaration continues. He got an emergency declaration for the situation that he created by saying, come to New York, we'll give you more welfare, we'll give you better housing, we'll give you money, we'll give you salaries, we'll give you a credit card. They were being treated better than our own homeless. Shockingly, they were being treated way better than our veterans. In fact, veterans were being thrown out of facilities by Adams, who wants a pardon, to put in these illegals who were criminals. They ruined the Roosevelt Hotel. They ruined the area around Floyd Bennett Field, even though he was told that. There's 60% of the crime in Queens. And he wants us to give him money for it. He wants you to pay for what he asked for. And did he ask for it? Question, no answer. Did he ask for it so he could have emergency powers, so he could give extraordinarily expensive contracts out to his pals, who would then kick it back to his pals? Oh, like the case I prosecuted against Ed Koch administration. Now, Ed Koch was innocent of knowing about it, but he was stupid enough and lazy enough and in his own head enough that he let it happen all around him. Millions of dollars in kickbacks by the Democrats. That's what they expect. That's what the Democratic leaders expect. That's what they've been doing to my old city for 150 years since Boss Tweed, and they've been doing it since de Blasio came back. Adams either is sitting on top of it, totally unaware, or that's the way he pays for his $5,000 suits, his $1,000 shoes, and is going out every night dressed like a clown. He was a cop. I have still asked over now 5 years to name one arrested he made. He was a cop under me. I never remember him being a cop. I remember him being a politician, complaining about how badly black cops were treated, most often phony claims. Now, I say that as someone he endorsed in 1997, although he's called me all the worst names since then. Might have even occasionally, I don't know if he's one that compared me to Hitler. They all do. I'm the only mayor. I'm the only. Never mind. I mean, they're awful. And the idea of pardoning them, and I really think it would be embarrassing, because I think the state will still go after him because they don't like him either. So, and and obviously the kickbacks would be prosecutable both by the federal government and by the state government. And the state already there are 5 investigations of it. And it's one thing to say he wouldn't have been investigated if he hadn't criticized Biden, which is true. And another thing to say, the present case kind of sounds like bullshit, upgraded things. It's another thing to say he gave out contracts for illegal aliens that seemed to be 5 times more than they should be. Right from the very beginning, they were criticized as being excessively expensive. Now, is that because he's like a stupid businessman and generous? Or is it because it creates the room for the kickback? That's right. Now, if he was just doing it accidentally, he'd be the first Democrat that did that, because they all do it to create the room for the kickback. This is habitual conduct. This is habitual conduct for big city, Democrat crooked city Democrat mayors. And in New York, oh gosh almighty, it goes back to the last century. It doesn't happen when there's a Republican or independent mayor. I can guarantee you it happens just like the crooked courts happen when it's a Democratic mayor. The courts in our city are because of Hochul, Adams, and their political bosses completely corrupt and do their bidding.
So is it too early to tell? Do you think Adams can survive this politically?
No. No, I think that the prediction of our good friend, who the president should talk to because he respects his opinion quite a bit, is correct, that Adams would not make it through a first term.
Interesting.
Maybe we'll put him on the show and see if he wants to say it himself.
Yeah, was that off the air?
No, yeah, it was off the air.
Okay.
He said it to me the day that Adams got elected. Because I said, he's
He
saying
did say
some
that. I remember
good
him saying
things.
that, yeah.
Well, two people told me that, but one of them is a real expert.
Yeah.
And then he went on to explain how crooked he was in Brooklyn.
I wish that was on the record because.
And it's hard. It's hard to be in the Brooklyn Democrat organization and not be crooked.
Really?
Well, they don't want you around if you're not. You got to understand how crooks operate. It was like when the police department was systemically corrupt.
Yeah.
You couldn't be an honest police officer if you wanted to be. They took one guy who didn't want to take bribes and they just put it in his locker so they could have him jammed up. They didn't want him to not be taking it because then he could testify against it. Well, the Democrat Party of the four boroughs is systemically corrupt. They don't want an honest person hanging around who can go rat on them. There used to be an independent Democratic movement in New York. Koch was part of that. That's been gone for a long time. They now all cave in and they're crooks. And then they're the ones who appoint judges. And they require of the judges that they do whatever they say on political cases, which is why you had the two cases against Trump, and you had the Democratic dictatorship agent sitting on Engoron's lap, the girl sitting on his lap. Was an operative of the Democrat Party. She's never worked in her life except for the Democratic Party. What's she doing sitting next to the judge? Now, this has got to come out if you want to fix New York. You want to keep New York the way it is, you keep doing this.
Yeah.
And it's going to get worse and worse and worse. And given the way they voted in the last election, I'm sorry, the people of New York City, the majority of the people of the New York City are either brainwashed or exceedingly stupid. Wow. I mean, they got what they wished for. They voted for Adams. They voted for Adams when there were serious people saying he'd be corrupt. And if you go by history, he'd be corrupt. There are very few Democratic mayors that weren't corrupt. And then if they are not corrupt, the people around them are, because they do nothing about it, because the county leaders really run the city. The reason I could not be corrupt are two. I was brought up that way. My faith would stop me from being corrupt. And number two, I was a Republican. What the hell would I do any favors for them for? And I wasn't a Republican who was a rhino who's willing to live off their crumbs like you have in Michigan. And we have in New York. I mean, it's really pathetic. I mean, Republicans at least could stand for cleaning up the corruption. It's one of the things we can contribute to our republic. Of course, you could get ruined like me and have phony cases brought against you, or have trials in which you're not allowed to testify, you're not allowed to offer a defense, and then they get a $145 million judgment against you, and the judge tries to impoverish you completely when he didn't do anything wrong. So Mike Walls just got picked as national security advisor. You all know Mike. He's on television quite a bit, opining on national affairs quite intelligently. He's a combat veteran.
He represents the district right down here. We were just with him a couple weeks ago.
We were with him just a couple of weeks ago.
That's fine. Is that official? That's a rumor. Is that a well substantiated rumor? I have heard that. But
Marco Rubio would be an excellent choice as Secretary of State. I don't know if he is a choice as Secretary of State, but he's an excellent choice as Secretary of State.
So these are, Mayor, I mean, these decisions are coming in at a pretty rapid clip. Is this how it was in 16, or is this a little bit faster?
It's faster. This is a little bit faster, I think. I mean, it took a long time. I remember, because I wanted to be Secretary of State, that it took a long time with Secretary of State. I know that took a long time. Secretary of Energy took a long time. He didn't make that decision until after the Army-Navy game. I remember talking to him about it at the Army-Navy game. No, I didn't want to be Secretary of Energy, but I had someone that I thought was excellent for the job. And he was, and he made us energy independent along with the president. You think this is faster, particularly if it continues at this rate. You know what's faster? These are higher level positions at an early stage. Usually you see the somewhat lower level positions fit decided first. But people like Walz and Rubio don't need a lot of vetting because they've been through the political wars that does the vetting for them. It's more the business. When you're appointing a business person who or like a Rick Scott, who wants to be majority leader. When you're appointing a political person, a lot of the vetting has been, you have a lot more. When you're appointing a political person, you already have had most of the vetting done for you. Let's put it that way, by the political process that would bring out major problems.
Well, we are just getting even Senator Rick Scott has announced this. So we're not hearing it from President Trump himself. Rick Scott writes, "I'm thrilled for my friend, Florida colleague, and our next Secretary of State, Marco Rubio." So it does appear that the president is. We haven't heard from him or anyone directly with him, but it does appear that Marco Rubio will be our next Secretary of State.
I don't think that Rick Scott would write that if it weren't true.
Right.
And he's sort of on the inside. I'm surprised they did it that way because that's an announcement you want to make.
That's a big one.
But hey, John Kennedy announced Robert F. Kennedy Sr. as the Attorney General by opening the door at 4:00 in the morning of his Georgetown apartment and yelling out, "It's Bobby!" Then he closed the door because he didn't want to take questions about appointing his brother. That's actually a joke. He said he was going to do it that way, but he actually didn't. But he said, "You guys are giving me such a hard time. If it is Bobby, I'm just going to open the door and yell out at 4 a.m.
That is funny.
It's always good to have a president with a sense of humor, huh?
Yeah, that's absolutely.
Biden and Harris really had a great sense of humor.
Oh my goodness, Kamala Harris.
But every time Biden would tell a joke, everybody would rush to want to put a straitjacket on him and put him in a crazy house. And every time Harris told a joke, she would start cackling and you couldn't hear the joke. So if it was a joke.
That's awesome.
What do you think of the fact that Schumer will not allow McCormick to go to the briefing for the new senators because Schumer has decided he isn't elected yet, even though the election's been called? And by the way,
what a jerk.
He's won by more than Rosen has in Las Vegas.
Yeah.
He's ahead by 30,000 and Rosen is ahead by 40,000 and Rosen is ahead by only half of that, but she's going to be there. What's the difference between them? One's a Democrat, the other's a Republican. Can they never stop? Can they never stop being petty tyrants and dictators? What the hell? I mean, how do you justify not allowing McCormick? So the guy is still contesting it. So are the Republicans in Nevada, but it's been called.
Yeah.
And Rosen won by 21,000. McCormick won by 40,000.
It's absurd.
And if they're sitting there and then somebody else wins, well, then show them the tape of the. They're not going to be there either. So what are you gaining? So the election has already. Schumer, you don't get to call elections. Thank God, because we know how it would be done. But you don't get to keep McCormick out either. They're saying they're keeping Gallego out. But it hasn't been called for Gallego.
There's something going on with that. I wonder if he was real good friends with Casey. So he's just sticking.
Casey's been in the Senate forever.
Schumer and Casey, right? Yeah.
Who knows what kind of deals they did.
So, but that's
the reason
too bad.
why they never went after Biden, including the Republicans, because of senatorial courtesy means you can take $21 million from Red China. Then you can be a traitor to your country. That's pretty bad.
That's absurd.
That's pretty damn bad. So I'll show you an article from a couple of days ago. They had They had Mike Pompeo as one of the top people. Well, that's strike one for the Wall Street Journal. And for Treasury Secretary, well, these, of course, would all be current possibilities. They have John Paulson, who would also be an excellent choice. Howard Lutnick, who we've already pointed out. Robert Lighthizer, who was
Which role is this?
this is Secretary of the Treasury. I don't know all of them that well, but a couple of them I can certainly comment on. I've told you already that I think Lutnick could be an excellent Secretary of the Treasury. John Paulson would be also, largely because they come to it with massive personal experience. They're both academically qualified, but more importantly, they're practically qualified. Robert Lighthizer also, as the trade representative, given his knowledge of one of the key parts of our economy, would be terrific. Although it's terrible for Robert Lighthizer, but I'd like to see him back in his old job. This is a little like the Peter principle, where you do your job so well, they appoint you another one, you were better at the earlier one. Now, I'm not sure that's true of him. He may be great at Secretary of the Treasury, but I'd hate.
I see what you're saying.
When you got a great defensive coordinator, and he's won you world championships, sometimes you make him head coach. He really should go back.
How many times does that happen? That's a great analogy.
Yeah. So Lighthizer may be burdened by the fact that he's so good at what he does. But if he makes him Secretary of the Treasury, I'm sure he'll do a great job. If you can do a great job as the trade rep, you can do a great job as the Secretary of the Treasury.
Right.
Bill Hagerty, who was the former ambassador to Japan, would be an excellent choice. I don't know Scott Bessant, who's the Key Square Group founder. I just don't know. I don't know, so I can't really comment on it. I know Paulson well, and I know Howard well, and I can tell you 1,000%. Great choices. Lighthizer, Hagerty, can't go wrong. They did have Rubio top for Secretary of State, the Wall Street Journal.
Okay.
This is about
It'll be interesting to see.
like about 4 or 5 days ago. So these are like early picks.
So these
But
are
they
some-
also had Pompeo in the job for Defense Secretary, which I don't think is going to happen. They had Ratcliffe, who was the former National Security Advisor. They had Walls, who obviously is
for defense.
for defense.
So that'll be an interesting one now. Waltz is gone. Well, Waltz has been chosen elsewhere. Is that often a? It's not really. Is it usually? It's not. It can't be a current military person, right? But can a former military person serve as defense secretary?
You have to leave the military.
Yeah,
it's happened.
It has happened
Rarely,
but not often.
Right.
You want somebody.
Well, usually you want a civilian perspective. I mean, the benefit of having the job is that you have a civilian perspective on the military. So it should be somebody who understands the complexity of our military, but it's not necessarily been burdened by the prejudices or whatever. Sometimes, like with a police department, because New York has a structure like that, where the commissioner is a civilian, but most often a civilian who was a police officer. And that's why I selected Bratton originally, because he was from outside the New York City Police Department. He had never been part of the New York City Police Department. He could therefore take an objective view of who had to be moved. He moved 27 people, boom, who had to be moved for us to shake it up. So, but much more often in the case of the American military, they select a non-military person. Now, the person could have been in the military years ago, but and I think the best defense secretaries have turned out to be the business people who can give the military what it lacks, which is a sort of look from the business point of view in terms of its management and structure. And I mean, is it sometimes the military and police department lack the ability to really measure accountability, which is what I did for the New York City Police Department with the CompStat program. I changed accountability in the police department from a simple measure of it, which is the number of arrests you make, to a much more complex one, which is how do you reduce crime? because the ultimate goal of the police department is reducing crime, not arresting people. Arresting people is important, but if you arrest people and don't reduce crime, you're not accomplishing anything. So you have to learn, then you have to develop the measures necessary. I mean, measuring reduction of crime is much harder than measuring arrests. Same thing is true in the military. Measuring success in the military is difficult. Winning a war is the big success, but most of the time you're not at war, you're getting prepared for it. So measuring the success of the units is something that requires some real creative thinking. And that isn't always necessarily comes from the military. It's complicated. That's why that's a short way of saying I like bringing another discipline into the analysis of the military. But then it has to be somebody who is a quick learner or can pick up or through experience understands the military. People in Congress can sometimes be that person. Or
That's right.
so in defense, they have Pompeo, who's out, Ratcliffe, who was an excellent director of national intelligence. They had Mike Walls also, so I don't know who else is up for it. National security advisors, the runners-up to Walls were Rick Grinnell, Keith Kellogg, Robert O'Brien, who also is put here on the defense list. He was a Pentagon official under Bush, and Elbridge Colby. So we'll see.
So these are fast-moving decisions. We've got a few here now. Of course, Chief of Staff Susie Wiles, Deputy Chief of Staff Stephen Miller. His nomination for Secretary of State appears to be Marco Rubio. National Security Advisor Rep. Michael Waltz from right down here in Florida. EPA Director Lee Zeldin, a former congressman from New York. And we are hearing rumors. Mr. Lutnick is in the running for Treasury. We're hearing a lot about some potential. I mean, Attorney General, Mayor, that'll be an interesting one.
Mike Lee, Eric Schmidt, who was the Attorney General of Missouri, is now a senator from Missouri. Both of whom I know, both of whom are excellent lawyers. I don't know some of the others. Mark Paoletta, former general counsel of Trump's Office of Management and Budget.
We can't forget
Andrew Bailey of Missouri, Chris Kobach of Kansas.
Those are current attorney generals.
They are current attorneys general.
Well, a big oversight on my part. We can't forget our good friend, and I mean, maybe the most exciting pick. I'm excited for this pick. Tom Homan, Board Czar.
Yes, that was a great pick.
That was a no-brainer, and I think across the board looked at as a no-brainer. But so far, all of these great picks. Susie Wiles, I've been hearing about her since 2016, around then, right? She's on early, and she's been so good, appears to have been just someone who understands the president and can work with him and has been with him for quite some time. Deputy Chief of Staff, you speak very highly of him, Stephen Miller, solid choice. And now we're getting into some of these larger positions, Secretary of State, Marco Rubio. Of course, we can't leave out another good friend of yours, Elise Stefanik, who has been tapped to be the U.S. ambassador.
I think that was a bit of a good surprise choice. I never thought of Elise for that position, although the minute I heard it, I said, great. Here are a couple of to-do lists that can bring things together. That one of these are like the key issues that he faces, like Europe and Ukraine. That's a really tough one. There's a couple of articles this weekend that Ukraine has to win the war or Russia will become predominant. So I would ask the people who wrote those articles, I'm not going to just focus on one, there are several. I would generally be on their side. You can describe me as a war hawk if you want. When I ran for president, I sure was, and all my life I have been. And I'm a war hawk in the sense that I believe strongly in the Reagan doctrine, even before it was the Reagan doctrine, peace through strength. And the only way you can have peace through strength is your willingness to go to war. Because you can have all the strength in the world, you're not going to use it. Nobody's going to pay attention to you. And this is, Biden, Obama, Harris, those weaklings had neither. They reduced. You look at all the increases in the budget this year, and the Biden military was reduced by 1%. The world is at war, and we reduced military spending. Basically, you're asking to be taken over. Communists, come on in and take us over. We're not willing to spend money on defense, but we're willing to create. We now have record dependency. I got to believe we have more dependency than a lot of socialist countries. So when I say we're socialist, please don't laugh at me. And we have almost record low military spending. And we have 2 wars with many people who know what they're talking about worried about a world war. When we were worried about a world war before, since at one point Russia wasn't on the side of Germany, the communists around Roosevelt told them he had to increase military spending. Then when Stalin sided with the Nazis, the communists around Roosevelt kind of calmed it down. And then when the Nazis turned on Stalin, they pushed Roosevelt in the other direction. I think the untold story of the 20th century is the communist major influence on the Roosevelt administration and how Roosevelt's last decisions caused 40 years of war and the enslavement of Eastern Europe.
So the alternative was no.
Yeah, people in Eastern Europe hate Roosevelt. They know it. You go to Poland.
There's an alternative history.
They love Ronald Reagan and they hate Franklin Roosevelt. They know that Patton could have liberated them, and they know that Russia would not have been able to defeat America at the time. Russia was a beaten up, destroyed army, falling apart. Patton's army hadn't been used because we were too politically correct to use them until Eisenhower said, damn it, we got to use them.
So
and then he basically broke the jam at the Battle of the Bulge.
Wow.
With an army that didn't have to fight, but was considered by the Germans to be our best general and our best army that would have faced a Russian army that was decimated by the Nazis.
They were,
and I don't even think they'd have fought us in Poland. So I think Patton would have walked in, put the American flag down, and say, "Stay the hell out of this Catholic country."
I cannot.
And don't take away their churches for 50 years, you bastards, and stop killing them.
How close were we to doing that? Or is that just hard to say?
We weren't close to doing it because Roosevelt agreed at Potsdam, I think, even before Yalta, that Stalin would get his piece of the pie after the war. When Churchill was telling him, we're really not his friend, Franklin. Like he really isn't Uncle Joe. That's bullshit.
He really, yeah.
I mean, this guy came into it only because Hitler kicked him out. So he didn't come into this because he agrees with our democratic values. He came into it. He was with Hitler. He preferred to be with Hitler. And then we gave him Eastern Europe.
But Hitler didn't want to be with him.
I mean, Hitler is a really bad guy, and there's no point in figuring out who's worse, Stalin or Hitler. But it could be. I mean, I think Stalin killed more people. No question that Mao killed more than both of them.
And we never talk about Mao here. We do here, but growing up in our school system, they don't talk about Mao.
Oh God!
I wonder why.
Because a lot of our teachers were trained as communists.
Example number 1, Timmy Walls.
Yeah. So here are some of the recommendations, and one is to definitely work out the situation in Ukraine, because right now it's a complete tragedy. So let's say you say to me, let's say you say to me that you want Ukraine to win the war in Ukraine,
Yeah.
which is defined as to chase the Russians out. So tell me how you're going to do that. Are you willing? Well, there are a couple of ways to do that. The way Zelensky has proposed, who is, by the way, a crook. So please don't give him too much credit. He's the product of one of the most crooked oligarchs in Ukraine, Kolomoisky, who made him a millionaire. He's sitting on unbelievable amounts of corruption that still goes on in his government. And if you really think that all that money we gave them went to the troops, you really are a fool. So how much do we credit his advice on this? Well, here I think he's right. If you want to win, you probably have to attack Moscow, and not the silly little drone attacks they're doing, which don't mean anything. They shoot down all the drones. And by the way, if they continue to do it and they don't get some kind of support for that from Trump eventually, Putin's going to kick him in the ass. I mean, all he has to do is really bomb Kiev. And if they really, so now you say, well, one plan that he has is cut off all power to Moscow. I mean, if you could bomb Moscow, but now you're going to cause World War III. I mean, I think everybody would agree with that. Putin's going to respond to that, unless we think Putin is a paper tiger. There's any indication that Putin is a paper tiger. In other words, you could take out his major city and he's going to sit there like Biden and smile. No. So Zelensky, recognizing that, has said, we'll take out the power to Moscow. Moscow will have no power. Now, what would happen if some country took out the power to Washington, D.C. or New York?
Yeah.
We would go to war, wouldn't we? Well, I mean, anybody but feckless traitor Democrat would go to war. Any real American, I say like American man, but man or woman, would go to war if you took away all the power to our major city, which is New York, or our capital, which is Washington, or both. Because Moscow is really both, their capital and their major city. Now, he might not go to DEFCON biggest right away, because he might be able to settle it by just completely obliterating Kyiv, which he could do with tactical nuclear weapons without destroying the entire region and making it a nuclear nightmare. Remember, Russia is still the second most powerful military overall in the world, more than China. China is the biggest navy. We probably are tactically the strongest navy. Russia's never been really a great navy, and neither is China, until we let them. But in terms of nuclear weapons, Russia has more than we do. I don't know if you know that, but they have more than we do. They probably don't have nuclear weapons that are quite as sophisticated as ours. Our intermediate level ballistic missiles to do a job like taking out Kiev are much better. I mean, that's part of what won the Cold War for us. When Reagan deployed the intermediate range ballistic missiles at Russian cities, because then we could literally respond without necessarily creating a worldwide war. If Russia hit Poland, we could take out one of their cities. Just that, St. Petersburg, boom, just that city. We didn't have to take out all of Russia. And the Europeans wanted that because they were afraid we wouldn't defend them. We did it, and it really was one of the four factors that crushed the Soviet Union. Well, now they've done essentially the same thing. They have nuclear weapons that could take out a specific European city. So without necessarily attacking a NATO country, if the power to Moscow were taken out, they could eliminate Kyiv. Now, would that bring us into a war with them? Ukraine is not a NATO country. We have no obligation to go to war for them. They are responding to a provocation, taking out their power. I don't see the European countries supporting a major World War III over there taking out Kyiv. But I do see Mr. Zelensky looking like a terrible fool when his major city is destroyed because he's trying to win a war that he can't. Because we don't want to risk a nuclear war over Ukraine. Simple as that. I mean, we could put 100,000 troops in and help them take Moscow out. Why don't we do that, Ted? Why don't we put 100,000 troops in Ukraine to give Ukraine a victory?
Yeah, I mean, I think the American people may have
American people will go crazy.
problem with that.
And I can't tell you it would cause a world war, but I can't tell you it wouldn't.
Yeah.
I think Russia.
Imagine.
I think Russia would consider that an attack by the United States of America on what they regard now as their sovereign property. I mean, they have a different view of Ukraine that you can disregard or not at your peril, which is it belongs to them. It's always belonged to them. I think they're wrong historically, but I don't think they think they're wrong. And we have no treaty obligation. We haven't designated as non-touchable property until now. So we've said you attack Poland, you attack us. Right. But I haven't said that about Ukraine. There's a reason we did. There's a reason we didn't. Ukraine has historically, whether the Ukrainians agree with it or not, or even whether I agree with it or not, has historically been part of the Russian Empire, not the Soviet Union. There are two different things we're dealing here with. We're dealing with the Russian Empire, which is big but a little bit smaller than the Soviet Union, that extended into Poland, right? And it extended into Czechoslovakia and Yugoslavia. And that's what Roosevelt gave Stalin as a gift because of all the communists that were in his administration. So and now we've added some of the parts of the Soviet Union to the countries that we protect, Latvia, Lithuania, right? I mean, we've added those to the list because they're on the cusp of. They never really were part of the Russian Empire. They're sort of outliers, whereas Ukraine has always been considered to the Russians a very integral part of Russia. To the Ukrainians, half of them no, half of them yes, and now all of them no because of the atrocities of Vladimir Putin. So there's only one way to end the war without a further war or assuring that there's no further war, and that is to try to convince both of them to give up a little. Ukraine is going to have to give up in its dream of getting Russia out of Ukraine. They're not going to get out. And the only way to get them out is to risk World War III. On the other hand, Russia doesn't want to give back anything. I mean, they want it. But you got to give back something. You have to get them to give back something. And that's the trick for Trump. Make it a draw, not a victory for Russia, an all-out victory for Russia. And get some very, very serious guarantees of no further encroachment with penalties for it and the risk that we would go to war for that. I don't know what you do about NATO. That's really tough because from Putin's point of view, making them part of NATO just stretches the West into traditional Russia. And for us, making them part of NATO is a guarantee that Russia won't go any further. So that one we'll have to reflect on more. But the war is going to end in a compromise, not a victory for the UN. And the tragedy of it is the Biden people knew that and have let people die for a year to a year. This could have been done a year and a half ago. I think they're dying so that people can whack up money. But that's just me, who knows a lot about Ukraine than just about anybody, knows more about Ukraine than just about anybody else. So maybe I'm right. So far, I've been proven right about everything. And the ones I haven't been proven right about, I will be, although they're trying to destroy me over it or put me away for the rest of my life. I think the first thing that Trump has to do, obviously, is immediately show impact on the border. And I think he can do that with Tom Homan. I mean, Tom has been thinking about this every day for 4 years. And I think you're going to see an immediate impact on people coming in. And then I think you're going to see rolled out over a period of a very short time, because they've been working on this forever, a program to deport them, get them back, and stop the humanitarian crap. When you're killing Americans, there's no humanitarian crap. These people who came in are not like some romantic immigrants seeking a better life for themselves and their families. Sure, there are some among them that are, but a lot of them aren't. And a lot of them just came in because we did a totally unrealistic, horrible thing of destroying our borders. Destroying our borders is destroying our sovereignty. Destroying our sovereignty is destroying our country. What about Israel? Israel's real simple. Just let Bibi do what he wants to do and help him. He'll be over quick. Hamas should not exist anymore. No such thing as Hamas. We should be able to take it off the terrorist list because it doesn't exist. Israel should be allowed to keep troops in Gaza until Gaza becomes peaceful and they stop attacking and killing Jews and Americans. End of story. The people in Palestine have to have all the books should be taken that teach them to kill Americans and Jews, and they should be thrown into the ocean. Or if the environmentalists are worried about that, they should be burned. Or if you don't want to burn them, there's a big desert. Bury them in the desert. Dig a big hole in the desert and do what Muhammad and Hitler did to Jews, but instead put books there. Books that talk about the elimination of Jews. That'd be appropriate, huh? And let the people who supported the Mufti, who supported the final solution of Hitler, let them dig the big graves for the books. But you got to stop teaching. No child in Palestine, from the day the pieces started until forever, is taught to kill Jews and Americans. When you yell out death to America, we delay your becoming a state by 1 more year. Every time we hear it. Right now, it's going to be delayed for about 10 years. First time I hear death for America, it's 11, then 12, then 13. You might get to never. So shut up about death to America. Stop thinking it.
We're suckers, aren't we, if we work with a country? If we work with a country that does something like that.
A two-state solution. Here are the 2 states. One that's America's greatest ally, and the other that wants death to America. It's crazy. Well, Bill Clinton wanted to do it. Harris wanted to do it. Biden wants to do it. The New York Times wants to do it. You understand that?
No.
Why would you?
On his face, it's absurd.
Why would you take Palestinians when the Jordanians won't take them and the Egyptians won't take them? Because they're dangerous killers. I don't mean Hamas. I mean the so-called non-Hamas Palestinians. The ones all these little jackass communist Marxists, yuppies or whatever the hell you call them, are
the ones that all stood by while Israeli citizens were taken hostage and grabbed and thrown in the back of trucks.
Against our veterans today. Do we need any more vindication they hate America? I mean, what?
At some point, it becomes so self-destructive. It's in our own interest as a country to put a stop to it.
So there's got to be some land compromises that give a little bit to Ukraine, a little bit to Russia, and we end no further invasions. China, what's the shit out of them? What do you mean, no tariffs, no trade war? So the tariffs are not hurting us at all. Biden kept all the tariffs. He just didn't increase them. And as Douglas Murray says in the Post a couple of days ago in his little to-do list for Trump, America is the only country in the world that can entice China away from Russia. You're damn right, because we're the only country in the world that can fix China's economic problems that are endemic. China will fail if you let it. China has to swallow poison pill. What's the poison pill? The 700, 600 billion Chinese who are completely impoverished and starving. So when we think of their economy, we think of it as America, right? So America's GDP includes all of our rich people, all of our middle class people, and all of our poor people, and all of our starving people, whoever the hell they are. Because some of our starving people are doing better than some of our poor people, who are doing better than some of our middle class people nowadays. We don't really, and please don't get offended by this, but then take a trip to Haiti. We don't have poverty in America. We don't have poverty in America like in China. Half of China has more poverty than the worst part of America, way more. Half of America isn't impoverished. None of it is. Now, you've got to bring those people in before you can be a mature economy, because it's a false economy. And second, China is and has been since Mao a completely non-creative country. They can't create anything. That's why they steal technology, and there's a reason for it. And if we don't watch out, we will be too. It's because of communist education, which is the kind of education that's doled out by the teachers union to our American kids. That's why our kids can't add anymore. If I tell somebody to do division, they get their little, they have no idea what I'm talking about. When I do the little, they don't know what I'm talking about.
Right.
They got to go get an answer from a machine, which means they don't teach the basics of things. And therefore, if you don't know the basics of things, you can't create new things, which is why China has to have been, has been for the last 40 years, the major theft of technology. You stop them from doing that theft, and China and we have done so much better the last 4 or 5 years. Chinese economy is going this way. Now, there's not much room for it to go much further down, because it has 700 billion starving people. They're going to start. And I don't care how good their oppression is. There's a point at which starvation creates revolution.
Bingo.
And even if you keep the country together with revolution going on, you can't be a world power while you got revolution going on. So that pressure has to be applied to China. They got to be cut out of any of the economic benefits that they got from paying bribes to Biden. I don't know. This is probably too ambitious. I'd just go take Bagram back and toss him out. 400 miles from China, giving up an air base. And Biden gets away with that. And Hunter and Trey Gowdy wants Trump to pardon him. I don't get these guys that want pardons. The guys, I mean, Adams, pardoning Adams. And then the guy will get convicted of some kind of multi-million-dollar kickback scheme, which he was. I have withheld my judgment on Adams until now. Let me give it to you. I'd have been an enormously unsuccessful prosecutor if I can't figure out that guy's been whacking up money for about 12 years, and that he wanted those illegals there, and he paid exorbitant amount of money for contracts so that his aides could whack up the money. And he's not buying those $5,000 suits on his borough president's salary. So next thing that China should be told is Taiwan. No. You remember, Z, when you were sitting next to me and I bombed Syria and it didn't even interrupt my meal? You don't want to fuck with me.
That's a leader, I think.
Leave Taiwan alone. Look, you got McConnell's father-in-law to be a traitor, but that's the last one. NATO? Yeah, we should be part of NATO and they should pay. Damn right they should pay. We're defending them. And also they should kiss our ass for defending them. Everybody in France should say thank you to America twice, 3 times. No reason that we got to be suckers. Sorry. Erdogan should be told to straighten out. Well, let's put him on the list of the Axis members. He's been doing too much with Iran. And right now, you'd have to say he's like Franco was to the Nazi Italy, France, Stalin alliance. Qatar, they've gotten the message. They kicked out Hamas. But now, you see, they kicked them out fast because probably they were afraid that Trump was going to tell them that before they kicked them out, the hostages should be returned. They still have a lot of money in Qatar. So I would tell the Qatar government, we don't believe that you can't pressure them into getting the hostages back. And if they don't give us the hostages back, I want to be like Ronald Reagan. I want the hostages back when I'm being inaugurated. So if they don't come back, we're going to take all our money away from you and screw you. And don't tell me you're going to close our airbase because I know the guy who trained your police and he can show me how to defeat you quickly. Right?
Right.
He knows the guy is a good friend of his who trained the police.
Right. Yeah.
In fact, 2 of them. If he doesn't want to use me, he can use Bernie. I'm telling you, a group of SEALs or Rangers, just one group, could completely subjugate Qatar. Just be over. So you tell them, get me the hostages. You don't get me the hostages, we cut off relations, we cut off money, we cut off any travel to Qatar, and we keep the base anyway. And if you'd like to come and take the base, we're just putting a couple of teams of SEALs and Rangers in there. And by the time we're finished, you won't have a military, and because you don't have one, and you won't have a police force.
Yeah. Amazing.
We got to get tough. That's all. And, they respect that. I know the people in Qatar really well. I worked for them for a while. I mean, I did security for them.
We need tough guys like Tom Holman.
The reason they like us, but they hate Saudi Arabia. Even though they're Saudis.
Yeah.
I mean, there's no such thing as just Saudi. They all are. That whole island is Saudi. They're all related, but they hate Saudi Arabia. And on the other hand, Dubai and Abu Dhabi have good relations with Saudi Arabia. It'd be much better for Qatar if they had good relations with Saudi Arabia. It's not as if they're any more modern. I mean, you don't see a church in Qatar. Now in Dubai, you do see a little bit of that. You do. Dubai has achieved a certain degree of modernity. Abu Dhabi's more religious and fundamental. But I mean, it's important. It's important to create a relationship with Israel and Saudi Arabia, and to some extent, Qatar does what it can to put a monkey wrench into that. So they got to be straightened out. Just got to be slapped around.
Yeah.
They'll get straightened out. They know and they're also very realistic. They know they're not the United States. They know they're not militarily anything, and nobody's going to go to war for them.
Yeah.
Iran's not going to go to war for them. So they should stop sucking up to Iran. They should stop sucking up to Hamas. They threw out Hamas, but that's not good enough. The hostages should have come along with it. So we've covered enough, although there's plenty more to cover. Trump has a big decision to make with regard to the relationship with the Fed, which is supposed to be non-political, but was political as hell. So if it wants to be non-political, it shouldn't be screwing around with interest rates in order to help Biden, which is exactly what they did. The election interference by Iran should not be ignored. It should be investigated, because at the core of it are also the two plots to kill Donald Trump. And there should be, I believe, although I don't think, I hope Rubio can get enough control over the traitorous State Department so we can have a regime change plan for Iran. It's totally absurd that we've allowed Iran to be an enemy of the United States and to kill so many Americans for so long. There probably is no country on earth during this period of time, except one we've been at war with, that's killed more Americans than Iran. And we just sit here and smile. It's about time to take down the Ayatollah.
Well, maybe our future Secretary of State can bring in some, maybe a senior advisor or someone who can get in there and internally, because as Secretary of State, you're out there on the world stage. But as you pointed out, Mayor, that whole entity needs a lot of work from the inside out. And so maybe Marco, the senator, soon to be secretary, needs some folks to help him clean up Foggy Bottom, clean up that State Department from within. I mean, he's the Secretary of State. He's got a lot to do overseas. He needs someone that can be in there in Foggy Bottom, cleaning that place out.
There's no doubt he's got an Iranian spy operation operating right in the middle of it.
He's got to bring some people in that know how to do this sort of work.
Operating for the benefit of Iran almost for 30 years.
I know someone just for the job. I'm not going to say it.
Well, it's not me. So it's not. But I do believe that Iran has to be a major focus of regime change, because every effort that you make for peace in the Middle East between Israel and Palestine will be useless as long as Iran is governed by the regime of terror, because the regime of terror is dedicated religiously and maniacally to the elimination of the Jewish people. I didn't say just the elimination of Israel. I said to the final solution. And right there with it is death to America. How do you end up with a two-state solution when is Iran the strongest power in the Middle East? Well, Saudi Arabia is the richest, but they don't have a military. Well, Israel is probably the strongest power in the Middle East, but the second strongest. Yeah, and trying to destroy Israel, and trying to get stronger and stronger and stronger. Iran, just so you get an idea of the fanatic religious dictatorship, has just approved weddings at 9 years old. Sounds like they'd be very comfortable in California, but not in the rest of America. Remember, California reduced the Gavin Newsom in order to, I guess, take care of the pedophile lobby, reduced the penalties. Well, maybe they'd be happy with Iran, which I think it's all of Iran. Let me see. Let me make sure here. Well, they're poised to pass it. Iran is poised to pass a law that would lower the legal age of consent from 18 to 9. This would be following the example of Muhammad. This is a catastrophe for women, no kidding. The Iraqi's government Shia Muslim coalition has attempted to pass it twice, but backlash from Iraqi women prevented it. The religious groups, however, now hold a large majority in parliament, creating an uphill battle. It would also end women's rights to divorce, child custody, and inheritance. Remember, Biden and Obama are two of the biggest contributors to that government. I asked someone who's knowledgeable the other day if I was right that America is the government that's made the single largest contribution of money to Iran. I didn't say trade. I said money. And the answer is absolutely nobody close. We are a financier of that. That's got to end like that, and it will. But the big step, because they wouldn't take it last time, even though Pompeo wanted to do it. One of the things I think that got Pompeo cut out, Pompeo wanted to do a lot of things that he didn't have the extra to do. He also held up an investigation of Biden corruption for over a year at a time in which it could have resulted in all the things that the committee eventually got or that the hard drive revealed. And therefore, Biden would have been prosecuted and never president of the United States. He also was reluctant to fire the ambassador who was running a Hillary for president campaign and blocked the key witnesses in the Biden case and told me that the reason he didn't want to act against her was because she ran the lesbian coalition.
Crazy.
Which I said, I didn't think we did that sort of stuff. I didn't think we took that kind of stuff into consideration. And I think that's the reason why he was probably passed over.
Yeah, he is.
But he had a lot of good ideas. It's just getting to the. Also, his biggest failure was not to clean up the CIA when he was there and turning it over to that Regina person who probably had a lot to do with undermining President Trump and using the CIA to do that and weaponizing them.
Yeah.
That's a hell of a job. That's going to have to be straightened out. And that's dangerous because, as Schumer once said, they'll come after you. He warned Trump, you go after the CIA, they'll come after you. Turned out to be right. Huh? Right. So I covered most of the things that nobody's going to tell them. We can get the rest in tomorrow.
Yeah, we're entering hour 3, man.
And we don't want to do that. There's so much, though. I mean, nobody paid much attention to the pogrom the program that took place in Amsterdam, a big one. 63 people arrested, only 4 detained. It sounds like Bragg must have gone over there, or Soros and Harris must have paid for the bail, but they beat the living daylights out of the Jewish people in Denmark. A pogrom in Amsterdam, right in the shadow of Anne Frank's house. Come on. A terrible thing. A terrible, terrible thing. Somebody's suggesting that Sotomayor stepped down and they put Kamala on the Supreme Court. Are you kidding me? She just demonstrated the fact that she's a nitwit. And we already have somebody on the Supreme Court that doesn't know what a woman is. So we're going to have like 2?
Yeah.
I don't know how a senator could rightfully vote for her when she can't define a woman. The arrogance of not answering that question should have denied her an opportunity to be on the most important court in the world, and on a court that demands both intellectual honesty and great brilliance. If you can't define what a woman is, you don't deserve to be on the Supreme Court. I mean, you talk about science. It's just ridiculous. So they want her. They want her to be on the Supreme Court. The other thing they want is for Biden to step down and let Kamala be president. Isn't it a little late?
Can't make it up.
Isn't it a little late? First of all, it wouldn't matter. It's the same little cabal that's running the damn place anyway.
Yeah.
Not her. Not P-Brain. Imagine what the conversation between P-Brain and Trump is going to be.
We'll find out Thursday, or we'll find out Wednesday.
You think he try to make a deal for a pardon?
Oh, I can only imagine, Mayor. I can only imagine. He's not going to know who's there. He's like, who's this guy? Who's this guy coming up to my door?
So he says he's not going to pardon his son. Fine, don't pardon your son. Seems like you hate your granddaughter. I mean,
I don't understand.
you've never met her. You've never met your granddaughter. I don't think he's going to pardon his son.
You don't?
I think he's too selfish because it'll affect his legacy. And let his son fry.
Wow.
What the hell? It's only
What a nasty guy.
He's a nasty. That's the other thing about him that is completely ridiculous. Is he's an absolutely horrible human being.
Yeah.
But all you have to know is he refuses to meet with his granddaughter.
That really is like.
Now, only reason for that is pathological, insane narcissism.
Yeah.
Because he's afraid it'll hurt his reputation. His reputation as a Catholic was gone when he supported killing 7, 8, and 9-month babies. I mean, we know he's not really a Catholic when you support that.
Yeah.
We know he's not really a sensitive, sensible human being when he supports that. But let's all remember Veterans Day. If you know veterans and have friends who are, and we all do, thank them. Say a prayer for them. Also dedicate yourself to T2T.org. Remember, T2T.org takes care of our veterans in a very, very real way. If they are injured in the line of duty in a catastrophic way, they build smart homes for them. If they lose their lives, they're there to pay for the mortgage on the home or build a home. And now, Tunnel to Towers is taking on one of the real stains on America, which is veterans' homelessness. All the money that we have wasted on bringing illegals here who are now creating a massive crime wave. As I said, 60% of the crime in Queens is from illegals, and Adams and Hochul want money from Trump when they helped to cause it. That money could have been used to take care of our veterans, who, by the way, were tossed out of facilities for these animals who rape us and kill us. And so that's got to change. I think Trump will change it, but it can take a while. And right now, the only one in there that I know, well, I guess there are other groups. I just don't know them as well. I don't want to say that. But I can tell you with great authority that if Tunnel to Towers takes it on, it's going to get done. So $11 a month, T2T.org. On Veterans Day, that's the day to do it. Well, for all the reasons I said, but in particular to solve this curse of veterans' homelessness. No veteran should be homeless in this country. None. And that's our goal. That's Frank's goal. Frank Siller, who is the heart and soul behind Tunnel to Towers. T2T.org. We'll be back tomorrow at 7. And then we'll be here at 8 with America's Mayor Live. And we'll bring you a lot of the news that they don't bring you. They still do that. I don't know when that's going to change, but we'll talk about how that has to change. We got a lot to talk about as we come up to what will be the most active period in an administration, probably in a long time, if ever. So pray for the people of Ukraine that we stop needless sacrifices there. Pray for the people of Israel so they get the support from their friend America that they deserve. Pray for the people of Iran so they're delivered from the tyranny they live under. And pray for the people of America that we cooperate, all of us, in this chance to really reform this country and make it what our founders intended it to be. God bless America.
Shoulder, right shoulder, oh!
Bear the principle of common sense and rational discussion to the issues of our day. America was created at a time of great turmoil, tremendous disagreements, anger, hatred. There was a book written in 1776 that guided much of the discipline of thinking that brought to us the discovery of our freedoms, of our God-given freedoms. It was Thomas Paine's Common Sense, written in 1776, one of the first American bestsellers, in which Thomas Paine explained, by rational principles, the reason why these small colonies felt the necessity to separate from the Kingdom of Great Britain and the King of England. He explained their inherent desire for liberty, for freedom, freedom of religion, freedom of speech, the ability to select the people who govern them. And he explained it in ways that were understandable to all the people, not just the elite. Because the desire for freedom is universal. The desire for freedom adheres in the human mind, and it is part of the human soul. This is exactly the time we should consult our history. Look at what we've done in the past and see if we can't use it to help us now. We understand that our founders created the greatest country in the history of the world, the greatest democracy, the freest country, a country that has taken more people out of poverty than any country ever. All of us are so fortunate to be Americans. But a great deal of the reason for America's constant ability to self-improve is because we're able to reason, we're able to talk, we're able to analyze. We are able to apply